Roll call vote. Nathaniel Adams. Kelly Bonaventure.
Here.
Christy Bromley.
Present.
Anthony Kane.
Present.
Dr. Criddle. Ms. Christina Polk. Nicole Myers.
Here.
Chris Kimball.
Chandler Smith, Chris's property.
What's your name?
Dr. Chandler Smith,
Okay.
was Veterans Parish Superintendent.
Dr. Pecor.
Present.
Dr. Janet Pope.
Gerald Surratt.
Sierra Scott. Robert Wells. Kendra Taylor.
Present.
Jasmine Thibodeau. Present. Dr. Jason Van Meter.
Present.
We have a quorum.
And we want to recognize our guest today. I did invite Judge Maddox to come today after speaking with him on the phone. He is a proponent of truancy and has some best practices he will share with us today. So I did ask him to come speak with us a little bit. Thank you for coming to the
Yes, ma'am.
And of course, our LGOE champions listed behind us and our Supreme Court Justice staff member. See if we can back us. We want to go around the table and introduce ourselves again. Necessary, unnecessary, unnecessary. Unnecessary, yes, sure. Yes, but if people.
Probably necessary for the people.
All right. All right.
I'm Christy Bromley. I serve as the Director of Student Services for Sabine Parish Schools.
Dr. Chandler Smith, I'm the Superintendent for West Baton Rouge Parish Schools.
Nicole Myers, I'm a high school counselor at St. Tammany.
Jason Van Meter, Superintendent of Schools, County Parish.
Kendra Taylor, social worker, LaSalle Parish Schools. Sierra Scott, school counselor, social worker at Parish. Abby Petit, I'm with the Bessie office.
Regine Williams, Bessie, Dr. Sharon Clark, Bessie, and school leader facility leader. Fifth highest. Growing. And at the beginning here, and I'm coming after the 8 the right way. So yes, today is a good day for me. Right.
Right.
Thank you.
I'm Tavares Walker and I serve as the Executive Director. Tony Kane, Executive Director of Downsville Community Charter School.
Jasmine Thibodeau, assistant principal at Truancy High School in Katy Parish.
Nathaniel Adams, Director of Child Welfare and Attendance, Cattle Parish.
Cheryl Surratt, Policy Director at the Louisiana School Board Association.
Kelly Bonaventure for the East Baton Rouge District Attorney's Office, Truancy Coordinator.
Dr. Brittany Pecor, I'm a middle school counselor in Lafayette Parish.
Thank you, everybody, for being here, and we will get started, so we don't hold you here too long today. Next item.
Approval of minutes of the meeting held October 10th, 2025.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
So moved on this president. Can I get a second?
So
A second from Mr. Adams. We will start our meeting today with informational reports. And our first report is the impact of average daily attendance on the MFP program, and that's going to be with us. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I just want to be.
All right, good morning. I'm Bev Sienna with the Department of Education. We wanted to close out a discussion we had at the last meeting about what if the formula changed and utilized average daily attendance rather than enrollment and what that impact would be. We had some suspect that it was going to be a negative adjustment, but we did run a simulation as best we could to try to give you some perspective on what that change would be. Remember that average daily attendance is a different way of looking at data. For years now, we have, since really the early 1990s, about 1991, 92, we have perfected and gotten better at our enrollment numbers. But average daily attendance is different in enrollment in that it looks across the entire year. And it looks as when a student is there and not there. And so one thing to keep in mind is that it is going to be less because it encompasses absences, whether they're excused or not. So that's why you're going to always see ADA be less. So, and remember that the MFP focuses on presence. It's an enrollment date. It's making sure that the kids are there on that count date. It counts the student as one because the school systems, no matter who they are, have to prepare for those students, that individual student. Whereas ADA is looking at partial students. It only includes students there. So if they come, they don't get to school for whatever reason until April the 1st, they are counted in that ADA. And so that is sort of dilutes the ability of the cash to go out in a more fair way when you have students coming in and out. It also would count students who we don't normally count right now in MFP. When we tried to use the ADA data, one of the challenges was that, again, it is less. We have not as big a confidence in that average daily attendance. Everybody's working really hard to get their attendance data right. But we know that just data reporting in and of itself is complex. And so we have very tight now data quality routines. And when we collect enrollment, we know what might seem unusual. We give that feedback back to the school systems. So we have a lot of confidence in enrollment, not that we don't still audit, but we do have confidence in that. So when we tried to apply the ADA, it doesn't quite jive. In other words, we can't use it on the weights because the weights have a very unique counting purposes. For example, economic disadvantage, that data comes from a different source. Very much so, we feel very confident about that, but it's hard to mesh that I am Jane Smith as a student. Right now, I know Jane Smith is a student in a certain location on certain dates, and I know that Jane Smith might be economically disadvantaged. I can connect the dots in the data. It's much easier to track and be confident about that data. ADA doesn't really allow us to do that because of the fluctuations in the data. The other challenge is that we don't have it by residency. The charter schools and the state schools are funded by residency, which means a type 2 are basically a type 2 charter. For example, they're funded. If I have 3 students from Acadia and I have 4 students from Beauregard, we fund them based on that per pupil that is for the district from whence they reside. We can't do that by ADA. We don't have the capabilities. The system doesn't allow us to do that. We tried to figure out how to run a report and it was just really a challenge. So this simulation that you see, which the result gave us about a 208 million, I suspect it could be more than that, about a $208 million decrease statewide as best we could apply that data. You can also see, I did provide, if anybody was going to be curious, this is the entity by entity comparison. If you look at the first column in the orange, it gives you what that ADA generated. And then the blue column is what the current MFP would be. You can see on the back page that there are some positives there, which is impossible when it comes to data. There's no way you can have an average daily attendance that's going to be greater than your enrollment. So that's a data glitch that would need to be perfected should we ever want to consider this. And I know the department in partnership with all the school systems right now are working on their data with regards to attendance. Again, appreciate that it's a very complex data reporting system. So that's where we are. I think the general idea was just to have you be able to see that it is less, at least a couple $100 million statewide. That would be detrimental. We spoke last month about how in states where have opted not to do this, they've recognized that there are some entities who have a population of students who are quite challenged being economically disadvantaged, along with possibly a higher population of students with disabilities. And removing money for them may not be, you know, the best consideration when you're trying to get attendance up. So with that, I'll stop. That's all I have to share today. If there's any particular questions.
Any questions from anybody?
I don't know if my question, but I just want to add, Beth just talked about how it would be detrimental, and I just wanted to make a few points that, the base MFP has increased by about $160 since 2008, which is, about $9 a year. And, so I think we all know that, expecting that to keep up with just our increased cost on, utilities and transportation and all that, the base per pupil hasn't kept up. And then knowing that these students, like Beth just said, often have special needs, and to reduce our funding to, it just seems counterproductive to reduce funding for these students who need extra, and if they were in juvenile justice, I think they'd be getting 28, 30, 40,000, or more. And so, the idea to reduce, funding in order to increase services or get more in the classroom seems very counterproductive.
And a loss in MFP, it affects the entire school population, not just that kid who is not coming to the economies of scale. So that's something that we discussed at the last meeting. And I think Representative Firebird kind of like backed off the MFP portion of that discussion that we were having. So thank you, Beth, for doing a good job. It was complicated enough that it just doesn't make sense to go into the MFP part.
I have a follow-up question. I really want to follow up to a concept that you brought up at the last meeting. Even though it's a projected $208 million reduction in funding, if we were to use this formula, it wouldn't actually be a $208 million reduction, because you would have to have a hold harmless provision on the implementation of the change in formula. Is that correct?
That would be the option. Yeah, in most states, when they make a big change, just like we did in the early days of the formula back in the 1990s, early 2000s, usually there has to be a period of adjustment for entities to, be able to adjust their
and I'm just bringing that up because I would be concerned that some people would latch on to that $208 million. And that's a lot of money that we could be reallocating somewhere else, when that money's actually not available to reallocate somewhere else because it'd be held in a hold harmless.
Any other questions or concerns? Thank you very much. Now we'll move to our power presence guidance. Dr. Davis will do our presentation on power presence guidance. And some of this is just information we've already received, but we'll go over.
Yeah, we'll be relatively quick, but wanted to share that we went back through and looked at questions that you guys posed in our last session, and so tried to address those. I'm not going to read all the slides to you, please know that, but want you to have access to that information. And if I can figure out, there we go. So some things that were brought up about definitions and expectations and best practices. And so with that in mind, we'll start with a few definitions that are available to us through policy, and in some cases statute as well. And so a child is considered in attendance if they're physically present, but also if they're in an approved school activity and under the supervision of authorized personnel. So that, and that, like I say, is in statute and also in 741. Also, some questions were about whole day and half day attendance. So there are actually specific guidelines about how we consider that. And so a student needs to be present at least 51% of the day to get whole day attendance. And you'll see here that then it's 26 to 50% would put them in the half day category. And so if it's less than that, that's when we start getting into, they could be considered late to school in the morning, or we consider a PM tardy if they check in repeatedly, check out repeatedly unexcused. So obviously each school or system would have to look at your minutes to get the specifics on that, but that is defined. And that was a question that came up in the last meeting. So we wanted to let you know that that guidance was there. Also, categories of absences. Our absences fall into 3 categories: excused, unexcused, and suspended or expelled. So excused absences do not count for the purpose of truancy. Unexcused do. And there is some information in 741. We actually gave you an excerpt of 741 in your folder, the compulsory attendance section 1103, that gives information about what's considered excused absences. So you have that in your folder. Of course, it's also available online. And then suspension and expulsions, those do not count towards truancy unless a child is assigned to an alternative site and they don't show up for that to that alternative site. One thing I want to point out in all of these is that students are allowed to should be allowed to complete work no matter what type of absence, and if it's completed satisfactorily and in the time frames that you set up, they're eligible for full credit for that work per policy. So just some definitions and things to keep in mind there. Yes.
On the unexcused absences for making up work, is there typically we do a day for day on the excused absences? What's the expectation on the unexcused?
That's a local policy decision. And so the way that the way it's worded in policy is that, you know, completed satisfactorily and in a reasonable timeline. So those would be some local decisions that you could make. But of course, we want students to be able to make up work if they're not in attendance, and because we want them to learn the content. So those are just some general definitions, fairly straightforward, and but wanted to let you know, based on questions we had last time, that those things are outlined for us pretty clearly. There were other questions. So last time we talked about our general state strategy and how we're taking a tiered approach at the state level to supporting systems. So there were some questions about specific best strategies. So I want to talk just briefly today about some things that we recommend at the school level for tiered student support. Like, okay, we've identified that they're not in school. What are some things we know that we can do and that can work to help students be in school? So a couple of things that we're really promoting and where this really starts is we recommend that you establish attendance teams at the system and at the school level. This work is complex, as we've all come to learn, and it's really not a one-man show very effectively. And so for district attendance teams, you see some things here. You're setting that vision, establishing those expectations, setting policy that as it relates to attendance, and communicating those things, making sure your schools know, your families know, your communities know. Also, obtaining and providing resources. That goes through a system level team. And then ensuring consistency. So you create an attendance strategy for your system, then you're supporting that it looks consistent at the schools throughout your system, and that, you know, people are following the guidance. Important thing for system and school attendance teams is that we want to have a diverse group on this team, right? So it's important to have someone that works with attendance and those sorts of things, but also someone from the curriculum and instruction arena would be a really great thing, because if children miss school, they miss instruction. How can those things be recovered? People, you know, the counseling realm and those that have experience with supporting students that may have needs, that's a great voice to have. Someone from the special education department, also good to have on there. So people with diverse perspectives are really, you know, it's powerful to have those groups come together and do this work together. On the next slide here, you see here are some examples of district attendance team responsibilities. So we talked about these, but a couple that just highlight is establishing what are your goals, what are your expectations, and what actions are you going to take as a district attendance team, and then do you expect people to take at the school level? Having system-wide, district-wide data systems for tracking and analyzing, but this third one is really important, y'all. Understanding in your context, what are barriers to attendance? And then what are research-based solutions and interventions that can be applied to help students be back into school. In our guidance document, which you also have a copy of in your folder, has some specific information about that, but also our team is available to help think through that and provide support if that would be helpful as well. And then you see some other things there, and we mentioned some of those before. So school attendance teams, you know, similar concept, but at the school level. And so this is where we're really honing in on identifying specific barriers for students in those schools and thinking about how can we provide interventions and supports to help alleviate those problems and mitigate those problems. But district leaders, need to provide support to schools in doing that work. Again, we strongly recommend a diverse group on this team because you need those various perspectives. So it's typically at minimum an administrator, a counselor, maybe a lead teacher, but depending on the demographics of your school, important to have those diverse groups. A data manager, someone that has access to the data and knows how to, pull it for you as needed to identify the children that need support. And so got a list of some key responsibilities here. We do promote the concept of a tiered strategy, and we're going to talk about what that means at the school level. But again, that fourth bullet, really identifying those factors that are causing the attendance issues. Very, very important. So when we are doing our strategies, we recommend starting with a proactive approach. So we're going to recommend 3 tiers. When I talk to system and school leaders in our meetings, you want to have more tiers? Go for it. But we recommend at least 3. We think that there's some research behind that, and there's some benchmarks that are really established that we can follow there. So proactive strategies, that's universal. That's targeting all students, and that is just trying to promote good, solid attendance across your system and within a school. And so these are, this first one is really, really important. Providing meaningful, relevant, engaging instruction. Did students and parents see the value in being there? And listen, teachers are doing amazing things in classrooms every day across this state. And so how do we make sure that kids are connecting with that and engaging with that? Also, this third bullet I want to highlight here, using clear and timely processes for communicating about attendance. And that is more general, large-scale public communications, as well as those individual parent and family communications as they are needed. So how are you using your website, social media, other resources to say, in our parish, the attendance matters and here's why. And here are our expectations for attendance. Here is how we support attendance. What are you putting out there as your guidance on that? But then also, and we'll talk about this in just a moment, when we have to have those one-on-one conversations or written communications, what are we including in those? And are we doing it in a timely fashion so that it can have the desired impact? We can share the appropriate information and it can have the desired impact. But also incentivizing attendance. We've been talking about that recently. It is holiday, winter, and sickness season. And so historically there are dips during this time of year, but we've been asking those system leaders that we've been working with, how do you look at your previous data and go, okay, what are our historic dip days? How can we do things? How can we be proactive to combat those or mitigate that? Some examples are not having your Christmas program at 9 o'clock in the morning and then having everyone check out afterwards. Can we have instruction during the day and have a really amazing program towards the end of the day? How are we strategically using our professional learning days and different other incentives to promote good attendance on days that have historically not had the best attendance? And then also cultivating a sense of belonging for students. Our kids, yes, we want them engaged in instruction, but are they also connecting with clubs, sports, performance groups, those other things that can be really, really powerful? So proactive, that's what you're putting out to everyone. Early intervention, our recommendation is that these things would go into effect at the third unexcused absence. And a couple of reasons for that. But one is that there are some legal things that we are required to do at the third unexcused absence. So it seems like a logical time to increase our supports and gather some more information from students about why they're missing. So you'll see that we recommend focusing on students with 3 or more unexcused absences or have reached that 10% mark, because remember, that's when they're considered chronically absent. So there are some requirements here that we want to make sure everyone is clear on. When a child has their third unexcused absence or third unexcused tardy, we are required to notify them in writing. And also statute says that we are to hold a conference with them. And so I want to take just a moment and say that there are some best practices with this. And we've got a sample letter on our website if you're not sure how your letter looks and sounds. But one, we know that, and there's some legal requirements in that letter, but otherwise we want to use simplistic terminology. We don't want it to sound like, complete legal jargon. We want it to be very explicit about what are our expectations, and here are the days your student has missed, because we know historically parents underestimate the number of days their students have been tardy or have missed school. So just listing it out can be very eye-opening. And then when we get them in for those conferences, approaching that with a spirit of collaboration and relationship building, and really saying, okay, what are our barriers? And then thinking about targeted solutions or interventions that can be paired with those barriers. And again, our guidance document and website has some more information on specifics about that. Or if you'd like to visit with our team about it, we'd be happy to do that. Attendance@la.gov. And we will get back in touch with you and can set something up. So some other examples of early intervention strategies, we mentioned this specific barrier. Transportation, what are some creative transportation solutions that you could think about? If there's a need for some uniforms or some of that support, that how can we connect them with those resources? This third bullet is one I like to highlight: partnering students with a school level mentor. This does not have to be the school counselor or someone with a lot of letters behind their name. It can just be an adult on that campus that commits to connecting with that student or a group of students on a regular basis. And it's a touch point. Hey, good to see you this morning. Or I noticed you weren't here yesterday. So just someone that they can connect with on that campus. Had some really great conversations in one of our counselor institutes last week, where counselors were thinking about really great people on their campus that could be a good connect point for students. We've got teachers, we've got counselors, but we've got coaches, we've got paraprofessionals, we've got custodians, we've got some really great people that could be a touch point on that campus. And that speaks to that kids feeling connected to school and feeling, like they belong, and that someone notices when they're not there. That can be really, really important. And then if they do miss, be like, hey, how are we gonna get that? Got a plan for that makeup work? Are we gonna, because we certainly want to recover any lost one. So our highest tier for student support that we recommend, we call it comprehensive. We recommend that coming in at that 5th unexcused absence, because that is at the 5th unexcused absence within a semester is when a student is considered habitually absent or tardy. And so we talked some about truancy definitions last time. And so we need to do another written notification. We need to reach out to parents, but want to talk about a few other best practices and strategies that we know that can help students that have hit this threshold and maybe need more comprehensive support. Increased academic supports. If they've missed quite a bit of school, it's a good chance they're in an academic hole to some degree. How are we helping them build a path out of that? How are we giving them a ladder to climb out of to recover that learning that they have lost? Home visits can be really powerful. That's something that also, as you're thinking about your district level strategy, what needs to be our expectations and processes for that? A lot of our systems partner with their local law enforcement agencies to help with those. But that can look different in different places. that idea of interagency collaboration. At this point, we may identify some differences, some issues that are beyond the school scope. And so we can connect them with some local agencies that could provide some necessary supports. There are some legal notifications that need to be made at this point. And we talked some about those last time, but just don't want to lose sight of that. So I'll leave you with this. And we did put some data, you've got some data in your handouts that let you know a bit about chronic absenteeism, truancy from last year, because I know you asked about those. But here's the big takeaway I'd like you to take from our power of presence is this idea that we've got some prompts, we've got some things we've got to do every day. We've got some things we've got to do at the third and the fifth absence. But I really want us to think about these supports on this third column. What are we doing alongside? How are we identifying barriers and putting solutions and supports in place that help students get back into school, help them get back on track with their learning, and help them be present, because we really do believe there is power in students being, in school and engaging with learning. So thank you for the opportunity to share today. Feel free to go home and read our guidance document that you now have a hard copy of cover to cover. We've gotten good feedback on it, but are also open to other questions and comments if you're reading it and you wonder about something. So thank you, Dr. Clark.
I think one thing we probably need to add in our guidance that I've gotten a couple of emails on is when we talk about whole day attendance and half day attendance, making sure for that high school component we also factor in the Carnegie unit.
Yes.
Because just because you're in half day attendance,
yes, ma'am,
doesn't mean that you're meeting the seat requirements for Carnegie units, which is the 7,900. So I think we need to make sure
we can absolutely. Absolutely. No, that's a great feedback, and we can absolutely provide that update. Yes.
I have a question. Looking at your data, I think the thing that jumps out to me is there are some schools that have 0% chronic absenteeism. And then there's some that have much higher, and that just makes me skeptical of the way they're defining that. And
so, okay, yes, ma'am. This is last year's data that was reported as of the end of last year. We are working closely with Systems in School as well as with our data team to ensure that we've got more accurate data this year as our team has come into play, and we're really working to support this. And that was one of the things that, Beth referenced. We're trying to make sure our data is cleaner so that we can identify the right children that need support and may need guidance. So
yeah. That's what I was thinking, that some of these that have much higher, maybe someone that's really towing the line, that they want all their students there. They're not accepting a bunch of fluff and they're reporting it. Whereas those who have 0% are kind of padding their books and, just not identifying. And so that's a major issue.
Yes. I agree. And we are, like I say, we're working to make sure that the right children are being identified that need the supports in these areas.
And also going back to the fact that the data is being uploaded to the state on a daily basis. I think you and I had a conversation about making sure that we're checking outliers. Because once that data is uploaded to the state, if somebody's going back and changing that data to the point where it's becoming a 0 or 10 or whatever, that should be picked up by the by the state.
Our data team has been very collaborative with us on how that's received and how we can have access to it. We're appreciative of that.
Something to say about the data, because it also shows like a big jump in middle school, right? And chronic absenteeism is the one I'm looking at. Plus, in high school, it's even higher. And there's a lot of research out there on engagement and the different types, the cognitive, behavioral, and emotional engagement.
Yes.
And a lot of what's talked about in here is that behavioral showing up, right? But a lot of what predicts them continuing to show up are some of the other things you discussed, right? The emotional connections, the sense of belonging, the relevance to what's going on.
Yes.
And I think a developmental perspective also added with elementary, middle school, and high, like looking at young adolescents, some of those developmental needs is what is actually keeping them away from school and then also encouraging them to come. So I think that kind of breaking it down like that would also help the systems and the school levels know how to target and be more proactive if you're also looking at it through that lens. I think it's really important. Because it's totally different why they're not showing up and the way that they're thinking about it.
Yes, and I will say the document that you have, yes, we've printed you a hard copy, but it is a living, breathing, working document. And so I call this 1.0. And so, you know, and as we've actually lived and worked with it, we're like, ooh, okay, that's something that we want to beef up a section. So we're proud of the start, but we do not, you know, we haven't arrived. And so thank you for that feedback.
And then one of the most important ones you said was the engaging lessons, right? Is one of the key things that makes them want to come and build relationships and show up. And I think the professional learning component for the teachers, well, what does engagement look like differently for a young adolescent? Because I'm in a middle school and I love them. And they really have a lot of passion and energy and they want to do, but I think there's a disconnect between the teachers knowing how to make that connection. So I think giving them that would be proactive, right? Because the behavioral, the numbers is important, but getting behind those numbers is something that we all need, or our systems and schools need support in knowing how to read through it and what to give them.
Yeah, we're really wanting to get to those whys. That's an important part of our work. Yes.
Just looking for some assistance and clarity on the Head Start and pre-K. In our system, West Baton Rouge, we've held our Head Start and pre-K, they're connected to our early elementary. We kind of apply the same rules and rules. Our issue is consequences and like what are the triggers that happen after they miss so many unexcused. And in LA4, your funding is tied to their attendance. So it's critical for us to provide a great program. You know, I need the students there, but we want to build good habits for kindergarten. So are there some supports, and that's where I get the most pushback is what do I do with Head Start and pre-K, especially with tardies. They're tardy a lot.
So per statute, when a child enrolls in a formal education program, they with the public school, they technically become bound to the compulsory attendance laws. But we are dealing with 4-year-olds, in some case 3-year-olds. And so I don't want to give a non-answer here, but I do want to say, I think this is where your proactive strategies are really important. Like even at the very top, how are we communicating what our attendance expectations are and how do we promote and the importance of being there, being on time, and then incentivizing that with our families and our youngest students. And because then you're building this. School is a place I want to be. Right. School is a place that I should be, and every day is important, and things are happening. So we could certainly think about some more specifics for your context, but that's really where I would start, is because I think sometimes there's some misconceptions, and so really addressing those misconceptions head on.
Thank you.
I have a question about how we're addressing parents. Because we're talking about early childhood and they can't walk by themselves and they're not getting there by themselves. And so me representing elementary, it's most times the kids want to be there. It's just how do we get the parents to get them there on time? So those are some of the concerns I have. Like, what do we have besides? It's always negative. Like the truancy, although it helps, it's just still, and it's going to go to court. And we're gonna do this. And once they go to court and they find out nothing happens, then what happens after that? Because typically nothing happens. I had one parent that went through and I was like, oh, that's gonna happen. I got a slap on the wrist, bring the kids to school. You better bring them to school. And then that's it. It's the fear of going to court. But once they get there and once their friends tell them that nothing happens.
So a couple of things, and then we've got Judge Matlock is going to share some things from the judicial perspective and best practices. But there are mindset shifts that we have to work to address. And so that's one of those reasons, that third unexcused absence, you're supposed to send a letter, but also have a conference and sit down and say that, these are the expectations. And please know, I'm not looking at this with rose-colored glasses. I know that there are challenges, but we have seen, and research has shown us, when we have one-on-one conversations, they can be very impactful. And then I know, some places have some recovery and some requirements that are, to help students maybe. We're not doing away with the absence, but something could become excused. It's unexcused, can be some parental learning opportunity. I mean, there's some people that think creatively about some of those sorts of things. But it's that, I know that's a complex challenge.
It's just holding parents accountable, so maybe having classes for them.
Yes, yes.
And so that maybe.
Learning around this is really important. We talk about how are we professionally developing our teachers, our counselors, our attendance clerks, but then how are we also educating our parents? Some of it is truly a lack of understanding or really strong misconceptions. Oh, 2 or 3 days a month doesn't matter. It does. And so, but have we said that? Like, I mean, we have, but have we, looked someone in the eye and said, so those one-on-one contacts can be really powerful.
I think that's a really innovative idea to give them support in classes and
Yes.
educating the parents is at a certain number of unexcused or after that conference. But I don't know what that would look like creating those in the community, or would that be a school level thing?
It's definitely a partnership.
Yes.
Because the schools can't take one more thing, like I can't.
Right.
But
that would be a system level, yeah.
System level, and then the needs assessment you mentioned were one of the first things, right? System level, school level. Well, what does that actually look like? Is that information from parents as well? Is it families' voices, student voices, and teacher voices, not just the data and the numbers? Like
no, and that's one of the things we say. The data will get you started, but then you've got to dig into the whys and what's happening. So,
well, I think for I'm sorry.
No.
Like for East Baton Rouge, we have Truancy Assessment Service Center, which there's 14 across the state. So we're fortunate for East Baton Rouge to have a task site there. So they focus on early intervention and work with getting parenting classes, getting direct services, targeted services for identifying what the family needs. So, and it shows that early intervention is very successful.
Yes. So early is in.
Any other questions or concerns? And I do agree too that, I am a proponent of the fact that if schools are held accountable and teachers are held accountable, the parents and the community need to be held accountable. I just, every time we talk about this, and I hope I can stay chair of the committee once I say this, but when we have these conversations, we keep leaving out the parents. And they have to be a part of the conversation, and the punitive behaviors and activities and events always come back to the schools, to the point where we're actually sitting here discussing not taking MFP resources from our schools. And not still making sure parents are being held accountable to making sure their kids are going to school. And even in the high school, again, we have kids that work because they're helping to support those households and they're not coming to school. And to me, that's still a parental piece in there that they have to be held accountable for. So I do want to make sure that we're not discouraging educators sitting on a panel in a committee. And when I talk to the educators in New Orleans, it's still like Dr. Clark, we listen, we're following the guide, we're doing everything you guys are telling us. But at the end of the day, the students are not coming and the parents are still not being held accountable. If it's just, and I'm a parent, so I do understand, but if it's just making sure that when they walk into court and they're given that slap on the wrist and they come back to court because the kid is still absent because it's hurting our society, do some community service in the school. Be held accountable while you come and actually have to tutor or send in some of the classes and help with your own kid. But I do think that you have to make sure that the law is working on in favor of everybody who's a part of this in our space.
And yeah, I have one more thing. Because I'm thinking about high school and the parent. From like in my high school in particular, where I have a high truancy right now. We have also a very high transition. We receive a lot of students who have bounced from charter school to charter school to charter school. They come into St. Tammany because they can no longer stay in previous schools because of behavior. And what I'm finding is like I literally just did 2 registrations this past month. Kids have been out of school for 2 months. Their parent dropped them from the other school because they got written up. And when they came to us, they've been out of school for 2 months. So where's the consistency from school district to school district to make sure these kids aren't falling through the cracks?
And, those are some conversations that we've had, and I think when Judge Matlock shares be some perspective of that on the judicial side as well, but, that's an area we could strengthen. That's an area that, that we could grow in, and we can certainly look into that.
But once we take in that case, I deal with the same thing, actually, we're all charter, so even from one charter to another, to district to charter. But my question is, can we use EdLink as the guidance to who's truant or not, because it actually states it in there if they're truant. So they're coming to register to your district, and EdLink, it lets you know that they are truant. And can we, from there, continue the truancy pattern that they're on the.
I think it just comes down to consistency, because like when I give this to, I hedge that. Like at my school, thankfully, I have an administrator who is going to, you were expelled from your previous school or you missed the same days, we are gonna count, we are gonna make you do econs. We are gonna make you finish out your expulsion, even though you're young parish. But it doesn't happen in every school, and I think parents have realized that's the loophole. If my kid gets in trouble or they've been turned over for truancy, they just drop them and they move to another school.
That's what I'm saying, once that kid comes to my school, I can go into EdLink and I can see that that child was truant from another school. It actually proves that this child has been truant in the school district or the school that they're in. For consistency, can't we bridge that gap?
They're asking, the data system has the information, it's a policy question. If the student was driven previously, can the new school system still continue the truancy process? That's the question you're asking.
Yeah, and that is, yes, no, but I was thinking to you from the ability to see it. Sorry, that's where it was. Yes, so it is there. I didn't know if the new school could see it once they enroll. Okay.
There was also a law change this past session that requires that the discipline reports also follow that student. There before it was not required.
We only see it though after we've officially registered now. So sometimes the parent's not honest and doesn't tell us the actual what's happened. We don't see it until it's registered and I get official records. And I'm like, oh, and I have to bring it back in and say, how are we gonna address this?
And I would say there's also a loophole to some of our laws where we allow choice to parents to where they can homeschool, they can put them to charters, they can put them in non-publics, and there's the way that they can remove them from our school systems, and what they have to provide to us is limited. And so that may be an area that we need to look at, because you do want to make sure the parent isn't just pulling them out and saying they're putting them in some other place and not doing it, and just trying to avoid the problem and then sitting out for a little bit of time and then coming to you. So
it becomes a delicate walk. Like, this is your second chance. I want to give you that option as a counselor. I want to see them clean slate, start fresh, but you still have to have there's consequences, and we still have to meet those. The boundaries are there, but I don't know that it's across the board in every district.
Well, it's not across the board, but we have the same thing, just like she said. I mean, we're a charter school, and we have kids come from other districts. That same situation, and when we pick up on it, I tell them, like you said, you walk in here with a clean slate, but as soon as you start causing a problem with truancy, I'm pulling everything from your previous, and we're gonna send you to court. And we tell them that up front. We do an intake thing. We tell them this up front. Physically, if they know they're not bringing their kids to school, they're gonna say, well, I think I'll get back with you. And then you never hear from them.
I think my it just depends on the principal of the school at that time. I've had great admin like right now who are top fit, and others who were like.
I have a question about that. I mean, she brought up a great point, and I think Thomas spoke to that as well as far as the data. So Tony just mentioned, like, as people are coming into their school system, you've got a clean slate. But what happens, like, obviously for us as a public school system, you're not denying anything to any student. So all students are entering. If they are coming with a very risky, it doesn't really matter, we've got to enroll them, but truancy history, chronic absenteeism history, even if we exercise the mindset that once you have begun with us, here's where your data is, we can only control the amount of days that we have left. We can't go back and give you multiple opportunities for attendance recovery, because we may be already at the tail end of the semester. Even if we offer summer school, if it's, running it after spring semester, it may be impossible to recover the lost amount of days. Say as a school system, we are doing that, and it can be seen in EdLink through the data. But will that student still reflect in our numbers of chronic absenteeism and truancy because of their overall pattern of attendance?
At the LEA level, it would only count the days they were absent, you were out. So in the state, that kid would count as chronically absent, theoretically, if they still were chronically absent, but if they were not chronically absent in your district or one of your schools, then they would not show up in your numbers.
What about the truancy side of it? Because it's counting their overall pattern of what they've done throughout this, through whatever, whenever they've been enrolled. Whatever school.
Tell us whether the student's truant. Like y'all flag truant, we don't flag truant. The school system says the student was truant, yes, for fall, spring, or all. So I think that goes back to that previous question.
So these numbers that we were given here, for example, are EOY, right?
From last year, yes.
24, 25 EOY. So are you saying basically we would be looking at these numbers, let's say for truancy or whatever, EOY as well? That way it's the kids who were with us, or is it a kid who was, say, truant with us, you know, was with us for half a year and then left, right? That kid counts as well because he was with us and he's on. So because Edlin can pick up all the time, are we going off of certain days like 10-1, 2-1?
Edlin looks at the kid that's with you and what they were when they were with you.
Gotcha. Okay.
And you're the one telling us whether they were truant while they were enrolled with you.
Got it.
So then that goes back to this question of if they were truant one place, are they automatically truant when they get to the next place? And that's a policy question, I think.
It's a policy question that is under consideration at this time on how to be accurate, provide supports, but also be fair.
So when you say we're the ones that communicate that to you, do you mean based on the data that's in our systems?
So you might not realize that your person's doing it, but I think J Campus calculates.
Right, correct.
I think Power School, it's calculated that you do it manually. So they kick off a job that goes and counts and does it. But in addition to collecting attendance data, we collect a flag that says was like trim, and then it's fall F S for spring or A for all year. And you're the one reporting that. And then we just count based off of the flag that you send.
That may be an opportunity for us to come together, especially those like data managers, you guys, those of us who serve as CWAs, because oftentimes when we pull that information from our system, no matter how hard we input and check boxes, like it's very difficult to make our SIS data exactly match what's in EdLink.
Misty's work.
I don't, some members of Thompson's team and I meet every week. So we're working on that.
And you're never gonna have two data systems that perfectly match, right? Like the minute that file gets sent at 4:30 p.m., the attendance clerk goes in there and changes one thing, and now like it's about being, you want them to reflect similar information, but they're never gonna be, we've got 8 kids that are truant in this system, we're gonna have 8 exactly two.
And as Jamie has worked with me, you know, what's in EdLink is currently enrolled students. And so that can be you know, a source of some of the variance if you're clicking a report that says active and inactive, and we're just reporting active, you know, so there's some of those pieces of the puzzle as well.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is a presentation into our judicial plans. Family needs to serve the presentation on best practices forward.
Good morning or afternoon. I guess it's morning. At 4:45 this morning, I was in Shreveport. So may I sit down, and thank you, by the way. Kelly Bonaventure, who is really going to decide what is included for a child's truancy,
Or,
whether they're truant or not? I'll answer.
okay.
You are.
Yeah.
The district attorney is going to decide what they include in that child's packet. And if you choose in East Baton Rouge to include school ABC, Judge Grover's going to see that. She's going to look at it. And knowing Judge Grover, she's going to act on it appropriately, whatever that may be. Uh, Judges, FENS officers, task workers, all of our, Ms. Ponder is here with the task program. All of our work really is destroying silos. You're St. Tammany, right? You're St. Tammany. Okay. Patrick Pillay, Jenny, Ms. Ponder, Patrick Pillay, with the Bureau of Youth Services, something like that, nonprofit. Youth Service Bureau is in St. Tammany and Washington. He operates, I mean, you know better than I, but you seem kind of like you're not familiar with his work, but they do the task program there. Okay. You do, right? That's your task program there. 14 judicial districts or areas of venues of some kind have a task program. Task works without, how many, are all y'all familiar with task? Sort of the name. 14 jurisdictions of one kind or another, or areas, have that. They work with elementary for the most part only, or pre-elementary. And it's incredible. Who's Ms. Ponders with task? Our FENS officers work 0 to 18. They do a lot of things besides truancy. Task is more or less pure truancy, but obviously when you start working with a family, you're unwrapping a whole bunch of system needs. Task is one big system. FENS is an enormous system. And then there are the service sectors on top of that. Your best information, I know this, I'm circling back to coherence in a minute, Dr. Clark. Okay. Okay. The people with the best information about what's driving poor attendance are what I refer to as the door knockers. They are the people who work for a school system or a DA's office or a FENS program or a task program, child welfare and attendance with the school system, who actually go out and knock on the doors of the families who are not attending. They are the persons, you're doing your head up and down. They are the folks that know why a child is not attending school. And collectively, that's Rick Carson for you, among others, right? They are the ones that can tell you the reason this child is not attending. In Caldwell Parish, they will tell you because their mother is on drugs, she needs mental health services, she has no transportation, she can't drive to Monroe, and our only LPC in Caldwell Parish in Columbia has shut the doors and is no longer serving there. and it is a service desert. She can get med management out of the federally qualified medical center there, but
Health unit.
the health unit, but in Caldwell or Columbia, there's no service, and transportation is a problem. And the child's already been expelled. He's been sent to a school away from school. That's probably not Caldwell, but it could be Voiles. And he lives 4 miles from the school away from school, and there's no transportation. So that's why I say success is local. Our job, y'all's job, is to destroy the silos, create local systems. Dr. Davis, did she step out? Oh, right there. So y'all's work is amazing. I have watched it. We're going to see big changes year over year in those jurisdictions where Misty Davis, Roxy Mackins, Lexi, somebody. That's you. Hi, Lexi. And Rayla. Where's Rayla? Not here.
She's in here.
Okay. So in those areas where they're working, you're going to see huge changes year over year. Now it's happening literally right now. They're going into each school district and they're saying, count this, do this, do this. It's all process. It's no substance, but their process captures substance because they're telling that local team, find your services, find your plan. It's all beautiful and elegant, but it's only, they've all stepped out, I guess, ran from me. It's only Caddo, Acadia, maybe Amite, what is that, Livingston, somewhere along there. It's Rapides. Rapides, to the question, they weren't checking roll. Who was talking about schools that don't, or reported, somebody asked about schools that didn't report truancy.
Yeah, with 0%.
0%. That one of those, and probably the most glaring of that was Rapides, because of the work of Dr. Davis and her team. They have gone in and they are they now are doing things where the attendance clerk is calling each teacher in different parishes or different school systems. They'll do an intercom call at 8:15 or 8:30, whatever the appropriate time is. Have you checked your roll? Well, that wasn't happening a year ago. Anybody involved in any of those kind of changes? You are.
We do it at the central office level.
Okay. How long has that been going on?
This year.
Okay. Why this year and not last year?
Because they weren't checking roll. We saw it in the data.
Okay.
So we monitor it now.
Okay. So, and that's great. It's makes your stomach knot up because you're seeing the data. You're now on the map, right? But y'all are going to do something about it, right? I gathered that from your comments earlier. I'm like, I'm not worried about them. What parish are you?
West Baton Rouge.
Okay. I am worried about you a little bit. Not really. Not really. Not really.
That bad.
No, you're not. You're great. You're great. Y'all are at the summit, right?
Yes.
Okay. Y'all are sitting together and working your plan, right? Okay. I noticed that and remembered that, and I'm thrilled about it. So, but you don't have the easiest area there. Your parish, West Baton Rouge, and the two parishes below you, right? You tend to agree.
I would.
Okay. It's tough. St. John the Baptist is tough. So collaborative, silo destroying. Now I'll get to what y'all really maybe wanted to hear. Okay. After about 5 days, if a school wants to file a FENS complaint with the FENS officer, or if there's no FENS officer, with the judge, because it's a process and it's a due process right to be able to file a FENS petition. That mother who's not taking her child to school and that child who's not being taken to school has a due process right for somebody to do something about that under the FENS program. That child, depending on the age particularly, but in really all ages, is a victim. And that second grader who's not being taken to school has a right to be reported, a right for a fence petition to be filed, more importantly, a right for all the stuff leading up to that and some of the informal stuff following that to be looked at, done, and yes, accountability is important. You and I've talked about that, Dr. Clark. And good judges are willing to do that. Most juvenile jurisdiction judges understand. They lock up one mother in St. John West, the west bank of St. John the Baptist. That'll word will spread by the next day. And but the real win is for people to know that you will do that, and you not have to do that because you've now ordered them to ideally participate in parenting, substance use treatment, mental health, take your meds, pick up trash, tutor. But some of these folks are not ready to tutor, right? Some are, but I'd say most aren't, depending on the jurisdiction and area. So, but it has to be done collaborative. Judges have to trust the school system and the FINS officers and the task officers. And most task officers, Ms. Ponder, are actually commissioned FINS officers. Y'all can file whatever with the DA, handle complaints, handle mandatory. You are a convening officer of a mandatory conference. If a school system chooses to file that FINS petition after 5 days, the job of the school system does not stop. The school level needs to continue to work with that child and mother and family and father, grandmother, whoever, caretaker. Because right now, FINS has nowhere near the capacity to handle. How many of y'all are, well, you're all most of y'all fairly familiar. And in Caddo, you could get 3,000 or 4,000. Y'all could send 3,000 or 4,000 complaints like that, couldn't you? Based on a 5-day absence, many more than that by the end of the year. Thousands, probably. We could look at the data. You could probably send 10,000 of that. The court is funding 2 or 3, 4, maybe FINS officers, and then LCLE, the Louisiana Commission on Law Enforcement, funding a few task officers. But I can tell you the Shreveport community is funding a lot more FINS officers than the Supreme Court is. That's also happening in East Baton Rouge. It's also happening in Amite. It's happening in a lot of areas, and that's fine. Yes, ma'am.
About 60% of the salaries of existing officers.
Correct.
Yeah, we currently have 128 FINS officers across the state operating with $3.1 million.
Yeah. Which could be charitable contributions. It comes from parish commissions. It comes from city councils. It comes from grants and school systems. The building where these people are sitting in Caddo Parish, many of them, most of them are sitting, is being provided by the Caddo Parish school system. Y'all are paying the light bills. I had to remind Miss Shannon Weish of that yesterday. She said, "We've got all these people. We're doing." I said, "Where are y'all officed?" And Mr. Burton is aware of that transaction. Let me say. So, and y'all also have an amazing superintendent. I think. So, and one of my other points is every jurisdiction has a strength. What parish are you? Calcasieu. Well, your strength is a huge traditional historical culture of civic leadership. You stand out. Josh, Guy Bradbury, the names go on and on and on, let alone the mayors that 20 years ago and whatnot. There's a huge tradition of Calcasieu Cares. You've also got plants and a big boat that funds a lot of stuff.
We're fortunate too with the Mark Center. So we utilize our multi-agency resource center.
Okay.
We use them a lot, and we're very, very fortunate to have them.
Speaking of Josh.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And I need to mention that. Calcasieu has the MARC Center, MARC, Multi-Agency Resource Center. Lafayette has LaMarc, MARC. I think you would say y'all are better.
Always.
I'll be neutral on that, but you're different. Those are huge resources. Caddo has VYJ. It's a huge resource, unbelievable resource, but it happens collaboratively, doesn't it? And you've got the harbor. That's exactly right. So the bureau in your area, Bureau of Children's Services, Youth Services, you got everything VYJ has, much smaller scale, but everything except you don't have a harbor, you don't have a mark, and you don't have a La Marque. Who's from Lafayette? Anybody? Okay. The Plaquemines has care centers. They got people in every single school in Plaquemine. They had, depending on how you look at it, Judge Joy Labrana, a force, right? Anybody know her? I know Storm does. Does anybody know about the care centers in Plaquemine? Vital. Do you know how much their truancy is in Plaquemine? Can anybody pull it up? Do you mind, Misty, or somebody? I'll come back to that when you get that data. They are also in, I think, St. Charles, one of those other parishes right down there. If I'm not, St. Charles has care centers too, right? Mm-hmm. They've also got that leadership. They got Judge Tim Marcel. Baton Rouge got Gail Grover, unbelievable, and Adam Haney. And that is transformational in those areas where we have that. So those care centers are getting people before they hit lists like this. Are they on here? It's not a.
No, that's the AFP.
Well, but it would show the red line for them if they.
Well,
everybody. That's the average daily attendance. Okay. Misty, do you?
See, at the end of your last, there was 37. Look, it's on that's truancy. This is chronic.
Was how much?
This is chronic. At the end of the year, they were at 37.08.
Okay.
That was at the end of the year.
Yes. And we need to show that to Judge Labrano too, by the way. But they're having really good success. So if you don't have so y'all are all representing the state, but you also kind of have capacities at local levels, most of us, not me, but most of y'all, need to have a children and youth planning board, right? And that's where that local planning will happen. In 2 weeks, there's going to be a TBRI summit, 2.5 days in Natchitoches Parish. 3 weeks ago, nobody knew that, did they? Mm-hmm. That's how quickly that's happening.
Wasn't even planned.
It was not even planned, thanks to Rashawn, who's found the funding, found the presenters, found the plan, developed materials and all those things within like lightning speed. I know we're here to talk about fins. Thank you, and I will. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But we can't talk about attendance, and it's been raised already this morning, without talking about school climate and culture and curriculum. But I'll focus on child climate and culture for just a second. In Caddo, they have the We Care program. When a child walks into the door, there's somebody that's supposed to be welcome to Moe's. It is a very intentional, one-on-one relational thing, and it is permeating Mr. Adams, would you say, do you agree or disagree or totally agree?
We care culture. We appreciate not only the children, but those bus drivers, all workers, and who help get the children to school. We also do that with the parents as well. Attendance staff, task staff, as well as school staff, meet them on the bus ramp. If there's someone, like we were talking about, relationships, and we miss them, that person who's assigned to that area will tell the child the next day, I missed you, where were you? And that has helped a whole lot. And not just with our elementary, but even with our older students, middle school and high school students. We have people talking about success of children who are chronically late to school, running to get there on time. So that it has been a great help with us for our truancy.
Didn't exist 19 months ago, probably. I think my timing's And it has happened as a result of some of the things many people have done, but the Whole Health Louisiana does monthly lunch and learns. And I'm sure Rashawn's been a presenter one time or another. Probably if you haven't, you have been, and some of our folks. I will get the fins. Um, okay, all right. Fins needs $5 million, and we're going to be asking for it. And I'm probably not supposed to say that, am I, Storm? Okay. That will give us 80 to 100 additional people along with some programming. If, as we need to happen, school systems under the guidance of your brother-in-law, right? Misty Davis, if you don't want stuff known, don't tell it to me because I'm the most transparent individual you will ever know. That'll get you fired, Dr. Clark. Not you, me. I'm not coming back, I imagine. That will get us 80 to 100 additional fins, and that's what you need us to have so that you can send over those fins referrals and so that they can be processed. Now, that's not going to let you send over 3,000, but it's going to, or 10,000. It's going to let you send over many more. And it is also going to help create the collaborative atmosphere. And I'm not asking our Caterpillar school system for that. We're not, don't get me wrong. But that is the capacity that we need. We cannot lean into truancy. The state, the Board of Education and the Bessie Board can't lean into truancy without having consequences. And you can't have consequences if you don't have fins officers, can you, Kelly? You absolutely cannot. Or task officers who are also fins officers.
So I just, before the time run out, I just want to say this, that fins don't give consequences. We give rehabilitation. And we don't want anyone to go around saying that we're the ones that punish children and families. We rehabilitate them. We coordinate services around the families. And if you would take time out, in your own time to read, this book is what we put together for educators on fins during the Solution Summit. It has all the information you need. And where you fit in is I put together this little family conference, the little staple page. When Judge Matlock mentioned we don't want you to run away, like you still have a voice. It shows you where you fit in once a fins complaint is sent. Okay, because we do family conferences, mandatory conference, and the law says that you fit in these mandatory conferences because we still need your help, because the family still needs your help. Because once the fins officers identify what the underlying causes are through assessment, we still need you to know, and we need you to help us fix it, right? And then why TBRI trainings are so important, why Judge Matlock brought that up, is because we're trying to change the game a little bit. We're trying to change the approach because if we understand that these kids are coming from a hard place, we want to teach other people how to not only recognize it, but how to talk to little Johnny once he come back to school. How to make that phone call, to the mom, and how to approach her on the phone and not scare them away, but have them feel more comfortable in coming back because the mom may have a substance abuse issue or the mom may be overworking herself because she's the only person providing for that family. So all the information you need really is in this book. I'll share my information with you guys before we leave if you have any questions once you read this. But my suggestion is always to any school system is have one person in each school that communicate with your fins officer, not multiples. Have one person that's going to send that fins complaint. It really it helps you track what child is going to fins, right? In St. James Parish, that's where I worked many years ago. They with truancy, the truancy the truancy officers would meet with the families at 3 days. They would have what they call a truancy hearing, and they would determine whether or not the family needed mental health or something like that. And then they would determine if the family needed to go to fins. If they missed it, 2 days, if they missed if they fail to come to their meetings after 2 attempts, then they would send it over to FINS, so the days wouldn't get to 50, right? And then the FINS officer would get the case, and then they would be able to intervene and contact the family. And then that truancy officer would come to the family meeting with the FINS officer. And together they would come up with the plan. So always have that one person that will communicate with the FINS officer. Have that truancy officer, if you have that in your area, make sure they meet with the family and get creative first. Try to figure out if a plan could be, coordinated, collectively before it gets to FINS to see if you could work it out there first. And that's what I have.
I absolutely agree. FINS is not consequences, but I'll stand on my statement. You cannot have legal consequences if it had with some very rare, fairly extraordinary circumstances, if it has not passed through the hands of a FINS officer.
Yeah.
So
goes through FINS first. Make sure it goes through an informal process first. Only one of our areas don't have FINS now. I just got an application yesterday for the 7JDC. So the 20th.
Where's that?
That's Caldwell. What is that? Concordia. Concordia, yeah. I just got an application yesterday. Yes, East and West Feliciana need somebody. So, waiting on them to find someone and send us an application. That's the only area, the only judge that does not have one. So that should be the only area that should be skipping through over the informal process. Everyone else should be going through, hopefully, you guys go through the informal process first, because like Judge said, that is due process. They have that right for somebody to help them first, right? I always tell people, and you think about this when you're talking to your schools, I always tell folks to, when you look at this, if you look at the back of this area at that, this is the DOE checklist. And myself, Storm, and Misty, we're working on trying to abbreviate this a little bit. If you look at this and if you have a grandchild, your child, or the little kid that sit next to you in church and asks for peppermint every Sunday, out of your purse, you take that kid name and you put that kid name on that application. And then you react. How fast will you complete that application? That complaint? And because some people say, I don't have time to do it. Well, if it was your kid, would you want your kid to have that right to that intervention?
I would say even in East and West Feliciana, there is a FINS system. There's just no FINS officer because it is a right. And the school system has a right to file that complaint with the court having juvenile jurisdiction there. And that court has a duty to do something with it. You had a question.
Yes, sir. Actually, what I was thinking about was when the Solution Summit was held earlier this year in Alexandria, many of our district's child welfare and attendance personnel were not in attendance due to the fact that it was held at the same time as the school law conference.
Right.
When we were looking ahead, and the reason I mentioned this and I'll explain is that this year's FINS conference is now being held simultaneously with the LDOE's teacher leader event. Those of us from
which FINS conference?
Upcoming FINS conference in the spring. It is.
Is that the FINS Association?
Yes.
Okay, that's not us.
That's still a problem.
Yeah, that's the association. Yeah.
When we talked all the resources and we're like, here's the task force, here are all the community partnerships. For those of us that exist in districts that none of those resources are applicable to us, it would be really important for you guys, because you may say, hey, here is a service provider that's in Caddo Parish, that's in Bossier, that's willing to travel to Sabine, that's willing to travel. Here's somebody in Natchitoches Parish, here's somebody from Calcasieu, Vernon, wherever they may be, because we often get caught up in here are the grandiose ideas or making changes towards truancy, but forgetting kind of the little people that don't have any of those resources in place.
Where are you again?
Sabine.
Sabine. Okay.
So what, in my mind, as we talked about this, even if it were our FINS resource officer, which is Mr. Kim Jones, with us working collaboratively together, say, he's gotten ideas from y'all, or you're presenting and you're like, hey, here are the partnerships.
Right.
Because oftentimes the way that the process works in an idealized environment is not what's happening in reality. And until we get to a point where we, speak of this openly and hey, let's come up with some solutions. Ultimately, we're worried about children, and we still have a whole lot of children that,
we can come to you. We can coordinate something, right?
Absolutely.
And put everybody together again.
And
we did it.
We're going to we want to bring y'all to Natchitoches on December 12th, 13th, 14th, or whatever those dates are, about two.
Right. It's free.
It's free. And the other thing you point, and to the point of my comments regarding East and West Feliciana, I know I'm out of time. The real problem in East and West Feliciana is not a lack of a FENS officer. It's a lack of services. And it's not really a lack of services to the full extent. It's a lack of awareness of the services that actually exist in East and West Feliciana. And one of the reasons that lack of awareness exists is because we don't have a FENS officer there. So it is a little bit circular. Rashawn and Pat have prepared an incredible in 2024 service array list, which is done district by district. Sabine will have an entry. There's also statewide services, but Sabine, and I'll make sure Kim Jones gets a copy. He probably got a copy of it, but I'll make sure he's relatively new.
Yes, sir.
We will make sure he gets a copy of that service array. You'll get it from him. I might get in trouble if I send it directly to you, but he won't get in trouble for sending it to you. Dr. Davis is asking us for that. Just know with the caveat that it's about to be updated by Pat Angel. Am I saying Pat's last name right?
That's right. So our time is up. I'm being asked to share. My email address is RSAUL. Again, that's RSAUL at LASC.org. rsol@lasc.org. Thank you very much.
Thank y'all.
Say your name.
My name is Rashawn Saul with Louisiana Supreme Court. Rashawn Saul.
The brains of the operation.
Jesus Christ.
Judge David Matlock.
Come on, let's go.
Dr. Clark's going to breathe a sigh of relief now.
We appreciate you both coming today. And before we wrap up, we have two more things. One, I do want to ask if anybody wants to share any best practices or challenges before we wrap up. And then we're going to talk about the recommendation for in response to complete the report. So anybody want to share any best practices or challenges thus far?
Just one challenge on the definition of truancy. It's by semester, and K-8, we kind of look at that as a year, and in high school we look at it by semester because of half units and whole units, pointing credits. Is there any? I know some states have a different version of the truancy definition. Is there any thought to possibly looking at that? Because we typically make an SBLC decision at the end of the year, look at attendance and everything. It's not by semester for K-8. I don't know if anybody else struggles with that. Right now it's 5 unexcused by semester, but really they have 10 unexcused for the year. They can't go over 10 unexcused for the year.
Right. And the statute says for students who let's say you have to be arrested about school calendar is that if you back the government that you calendar should when the semester starts and ends Mary School District just depending on that.
I know all that changed to minute. So is there any, I don't know, is there something that we could look at? We struggle with that because they technically have the year. I don't know if y'all should. We can just leave it.
What would you suggest?
I think they're truant officially when they're at over 10 unexcused absence, 10 or more. That's when they're truly truant, because we measure by the year in K-8, not by the semester. I don't know if any other district does measure by the semester, but we We don't have SBLC decisions about placement. We hold students back if they don't meet attendance requirements.
And although I agree, we wouldn't probably make it capture an SBLC decision until then. I think one of the advantages of doing it every semester in terms of when you look at truancy across the state for definition is that you can get other folks involved a little bit quicker. Even if it's not an SBLC decision to hold a kid back, we still have the opportunity to get them, you know, whether or not truancy, whether or not truancy show.
But we do that at 3, 5, and 8.
Yeah,
we do
agreed.
that.
Agreed. But I think it's just in terms of what the definition is. You know.
It was just what I was going to say. Essentially, like, if for that policy, the question is why did they say at the semester? The reason was to really identify students earlier and get them involved in that truancy process later. But I think that was really back to the 7th soon.
Any other challenges, best practices, concerns? Before we move to our recommendations.
I just want to throw out something, if I could. I think one of the challenges, for those of us who run a combination school, you've seen this dynamic play out. When you're either struggling junior high or middle school, and basically K through 8 is getting this as an unreasonable number of days, and you put them in truancy, but they're still getting passed. When you get into the high school, you've got seat minute requirements that give you leverage with the kids and the parents. And so you say, you know, I don't care what goes on, you got to make this seat time up, and you're not going to get credit, therefore you're not going to graduate. Guess what they do? Like, we're about to go through that in my school, and we've got a certain number of kids that are going to have to go through their seat time. And what's going to happen, and they all see it, and then next semester, I'm gonna have about 2. Because they know they're going to have to come to school anyway and get that seat time because they're going to graduate time. You don't have that leverage in K through 8, and the parents know it. Parents know that, yeah, I may get turned into truancy, I may go to court, I'm gonna get my hand slapped, and my kids can fill me in 30 days. As long as I figure out when that needs across the board, my kid gets promoted.
They still have to have the method construction.
We don't promote, we retained. Had to have an example view. It was hard, but that's what woke them up.
And if they don't have the 62,000 minutes, are you guys still allowing them to? And they don't make up any of the assignments or the time.
Mine make it up on Saturdays. We do attendance recovery, but if they don't meet the attendance requirements, SBLC holds them back.
Yeah, the minimum instructional minutes, they have to have an elementary too.
I know that's there, but you don't have the same level of, you got, and I know some schools are different than others, that they use their flexibility, but the parents know that flexibility is there. And you get into battles where it's like, you gotta have to get with regulation that says you will not receive a unit if you miss this percentage of minutes. That's not, and if it is, I have no things where it is that clearly stated as we go on to
it is clearly stated in 741, the minimum, so minimum. Yeah, can you give us a page number?
It's page 35 of the October 2025. All other students shall be in attendance at a minimum of 60,000 equivalent 167 6-hour days. In order to be eligible to receive grades, high school students shall be in attendance a minimum of X amount of time. They go to the specifics, but it's clearly there in subsection G. 1103, which is Google progression.
And I realize I'm pressing semantics here, but what you just read is a completely different thing. And the specificity is not there, as opposed to when you read the high school portion, it says in order to earn a Carnegie unit, you must have this. It does not say you cannot earn credit. And that, it just says they're supposed to be independent. It does not say that in order to get credit, you must be independent.
So you could give them a grade, but you could have to put them, if you could give them a grade within 3rd grade or whatever, but you could put the pupil progression and you don't have to promote you 4th grade.
If you don't need to require the minimum, yeah, the minimum.
The subsection of G, where I just read that says subsection 1, students in danger of failing due to excessive absences may be allowed to make up this time in class sessions held outside of regular time. No, so like I hear what you're saying. If you go look at this, I think you'll find that it's pretty clear that they shall be in attendance, in high school. It's the same session. It goes on in high school to be the exact same thing, but
We didn't promote it, they didn't have that, they didn't meet the minimums, the minimum minimums of instruction. We did not promote it.
Same.
So they had to come back and make up that, for the high school, they still need to come back and make up those, they may have an A. Cause you may have kids that could pass the course like this and they have an A, and if anything we give them, they have an A or B. But until they meet up those minimum instructions, we make them sit.
Actually, your people can manage your hiring, school attendance.
I would like to add too, because I hear you talking about elementary, and I'm still gonna press that the parental involved because we have to find some kind of way. That's what I mentioned earlier. I'm still standing on that. But I will say the schools are doing everything. We provide makeup seat time in my parish, my particular school. We provide opportunities for them to make it up. Sometimes it's Saturday, sometimes it's after school. Sometimes we use a digital platform for them to make it up. And this is in elementary school. And we deduct the amount of hours spent. And so even if they miss the time, if they made it up, then they will still pass. So it sounds like different schools are doing different things, and I wonder if this is the place where we will make it consistent as possible. So we have something in place. It isn't a pupil progression plan. I think I heard someone mention that. Yeah, it's in ours too, and so we do it. It's just difficult to get it done, and there is no how you get it done is usually after school, but there's no funds to pay the people after school to make it happen. So then we're struggling with trying to figure that part out, and it then becomes again all in the school. Then the parents know that they have to make it up, so they miss it as much as they want, and then we make it up, and it's all good. So I just think there's a missing piece. We will do our parts, but we have to somehow hold the most important people, bring the kids, and really, the school will come.
I'll have to say from a DA's perspective, I definitely see inconsistencies because we get referrals from charter, EBR schools, many different ones. And it's, we try to work with the schools to make it consistent, especially unfortunately it does have to be referred for, to go to Judge Grover, but it is a struggle working with all the different school systems and just inconsistent. So we try to work with them collaboratively. But especially when a new charter comes on, it's, everybody's doing it different. So we try to make it as uniform as possible for the parish, but I see the inconsistency of just.
What are some of the inconsistencies you see?
Just the social promotions, the extenuating circumstances. We see that a lot. Parents' notes, what's allowed, what's not, what's allowed. But I would already say the extenuating circumstances and social promotions has been an issue, but we work with them as far as it has to get a referral, what we would need and what's required.
Tardies are a big issue we deal with. Is a tardy of 2 minutes and, or 3 minutes the same as a tardy of 1 hour? And it's mostly elementary where we struggle with that because they can't control their tardiness. My go-to response, well, we provide a bus to every household in this parish. We ask you to please ride it. But I don't know what to do with tardy.
For tardies?
Or it's really time.
For the parent note, I mean, we've talked about that in the STAR task force, we brought it to guidance. So there is a parent note that we have on the website, which can.
And in the guidance, it's linked to.
To make sure it's pretty consistent, but when you get to the point of the extenuating circumstances, and I mean, that is a conversation we continue to have, because how many unexcused can you actually have?
And again, I keep pushing back on the fact that the collection has to be consistent. Going back to the point of seeing zero chronic absenteeism or zero for a percentage, we know that can't be true. I mean, that has to be false, but how is the collection process? How is the reporting process? So this is the process to make sure that we're working on it, to make sure it's consistent. And we will continue to listen and to put policy in place like we're doing right now. Kind of just discouraging, but because going back to Truancy, I deal with Truancy too a lot. And I've even put up a big sign at the entrance of my building, because high school has it too, that if you check your child at 11:21, you are considered absent for the half day or whole day. So I have to just let parents know, it's communicating to parents. And a lot of times once the parent reads that, we remind them, they're like, oh, you can stay in. So I know you were checking this child out for probably no reason other than to check the child out. So we just consistent across the state. The communication, we're gonna. Sorry.
No, you're good. I was just hoping, Lexi Pritchard, LDOE. We were hoping for the next meeting, we recognize that is the last meeting of this study group. And so we were wanting to ask y'all, we wanted to give you time to digest all of the materials in the packets that y'all received today. And we're hoping that by December 1st, if y'all have any recommendations, any things that we've shared here, if you could email that to attendance@la.gov, and we'll send you an email after this reminding you. We would love to draft the report ahead of the December meeting so that we can work through it together at the December meeting, and then be able to move that forward for endorsements and recommendations. Our report is due February 1st to the House Committee on Education and Bessie. And so we really wanted to make sure that the time we spent together, while it was brief, y'all, is going to account for lasting change. We want to make sure we're moving the needle forward with attendance. And so in the email that we send you, we'll also remind you of the points that were written in there, what we were asked to accomplish during this study group. And so we would very much like to spend our time on December 10th at 1 p.m. in the state library across the street, working through the report that we'll draft and just making sure it's at a place where everyone feels comfortable to bring it forward to the legislature. There were just a few other things that I wanted to mention. I think y'all mentioned that FINS is having a spring conference. Is that the FINS Association? Okay, which is separate from there. But I did want y'all to know, privileged information, but we will be having an attendance track at the Teacher Leader Summit this year in collaboration with FINS. And so we are working hand in hand with them. We're excited to offer that. Unfortunately, with the FINS Association, we can't do anything about that time. And I'm sure y'all recognize for the convention center in New Orleans, we have to book it 2 years out. And so those dates are not something that we have the ability to shift at this time. And then just one more thing, while December is the last meeting for this group, we do have plans to continue conversations and discussions. And so I think Dr. Clark will probably share more about that at December. But just want to thank y'all from LDOE and from Bessie in sharing that the time that y'all have spent here truly matters. And we're just so thankful for you to dedicate the time on attendance. You know, as we've mentioned in the last 2 meetings, the needle is moving in such positive ways in other areas, and we're kind of backtracking with attendance, and we just won't stand for that anymore. So the work that you're doing here is incredibly impactful. That's it.
Thank you everybody for coming today and let's leave it. Okay. Enjoy your Thanksgiving holiday.
Thank
I don't know.